Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're continuing on our little study here. It was a study promoted by American Sport Fishing Association. It was done by Southwick Associates, and I believe the principal is Rob Southwick. And they did a study of anglers, and they tried to define anglers by purchasing categories or fishing habits. They called them personas, but I've been calling them profiles just because it seems to fit a little bit better. And we've already looked at a few of these in the studies. We've looked at the average angler, who we said that's really nobody. Just the midpoint, if you will, in terms of all of the people that have taken the survey. And then we looked at the traditional angler. The traditional angler, by its nature, is passing down tradition. They're very avid fishing folks. They get out on the water quite a bit. They fish over 50 days a year. They're generally considering themselves intermediate or above average anglers. They purchase an awful lot, and they're the target of a lot of marketing that goes on from the fishing manufacturers and distributors. Makes sense. Then we looked at the occasional angler, and we found out that's a little bit different. Again, defining words by words, and it goes occasionally. They're up for the challenge. They like the outdoors. They certainly want to catch big trophy fish kind of things, and almost as if it was somebody who was on a vacation or visiting down at the shore or out on the lakes, and was going to take it up and do some fishing, but for the thrill of it more so than anything else. And typically they were kind of solo acts. They kind of went out on them by themselves, but could be drawn to do a little bit more by friends. And then we looked, speaking of friends, at the friendly fisher. And the friendly fisher was a whole different type of fishing persona or profile. That's the one that was enjoying the great outdoors, and actually their fishing time was kind of balanced off by other outdoor activities. They were very much into family. They liked the idea of it being more of a social type of event. Didn't matter too much if they caught the fish. It was more about the family time and time spent outdoors. So today we're going to look at another persona. That's called the consumptive angler. And about 12% of the folks that took this survey considered themselves consumptive anglers. And in essence, the consumptive angler is primarily enjoys catching fish for food, spending times outdoors, and to get away and relax. Now, I'm not sure how many folks that are viewing this cast are thinking of themselves in that regard, but I can tell you I've met an awful lot of consumptive anglers over the course of my fishing days. And it's interestingly enough, this group is primarily freshwater. But if you go to the head fleets, the party boats, the charter boat industry that sails in the ocean, chances are you're going to meet consumptive anglers. There's a fair mix in there. There's a lot that bring their friends along, but for the most part, the folks that are out there interested in catching fish for food, and fit right into this profile about spending time outdoors and getting away and relaxing in addition to that. This angler is primarily going to be fishing with bait in fresh water. Very interesting. Of course, my meetings and the folks that I interact with from a fishing standpoint are very much tainted by the fact that we're on the northeast seaboard, and that the ocean and the ocean bays and inlets are the primary places that we do fish. So somebody asked me the other day if I do fly reels. I don't see fly reels. And I don't see fly reels because the customer set that I handle is primarily fishing saltwater or fishing some of the inland streams and that with their freshwater bait. But these folks are primarily in freshwater, and they primarily fish with bait. Very different than what we've seen in these other profiles. Interestingly enough, about 40% of these folks are in the south, another 25% in the west, and only 10% in the northeast. So there you go. We're in the northeast here, and that makes all the difference in the world. Their motivations is to catch fish for food. Secondarily, participate in the tradition that was passed down, and pass on the love of fishing to others. So profile-wise, from a look at what their average age is, it's pretty much right on with the average angler. About half of the folks are female. About 1/3 have college degrees. All of that kind of blends in with the average angler, or the baseline of this study. But there's a high percentage, almost 80%, consider themselves novice, intermediate, or advanced. And I guess if you're fishing to eat, you better have an idea what it is that you're doing, right? So there's some marked differences here between this one and the occasional angler. Most of these folks are not participating for the thrill or the challenge, but primarily to catch fish for food. And it's interesting when I go out on these head boats or party boats or whatever the terms are, charter boats that you're familiar with. I'm a catch and release fisherman. So I will release, and every now and then, from time to time, folks come up to me, "Why'd you let that go? That was dinner," kind of thing. Well, that's not my motivation, but it is theirs, right? So if you look at how these folks got involved in the sport, almost all of them were introduced by an older family member or a fishing friend. Almost 90% of those folks fall into that category. And most of those, kind of higher side of it, was a family member other than a parent or grandparent or a friend. Very high percentage there versus the others. When you asked if they expect to go fishing next year, 90%, that's high, expected to go fishing next year. And what defined them in terms of the activities, the characteristics of it, of course, is catching a lot of fish because, well, if you're going to eat them, that's important. But also the other ones that we had mentioned about relaxing and having a good time, spending time with family and friends. So if you looked at the factors for what is important to them in selecting fishing sites, they're nearby, there's an abundance of fish, the water quality is good, and lack of crowds, interestingly enough. So I guess maybe that defines the Northeast at 10%. We've been dealing over time, historically, with some pollution issues. On the ocean itself, we deal with pretty strict fish limits or bag limits. So there's other things there that might deter folks that are not necessarily so in the South or in the West. Most of the folks do plan to go fishing, though, and the things that kind of compete with them, well, it's other outdoor recreational activities. I can see that again, Northeast being a low point. There's a lot of other activities going on, and our fishing season is limited by the cold weather. Family obligations and work are pretty high. We mentioned that about the friendly fisher, where they're competing with family time and work obligations. Well, in this case, 60% or 63% said other family obligations, and 53% said work obligations. So that's on the higher end of this study. So when they do fish, they do want to fish to get away and relax, and they also want to fish for food. And it says, why were you prevented last year? Well, the highest amount said weather, about 46%, health, about 20%, and didn't have anybody to go with was about 30%. So they are following the trends of the others. So when you look at who's selling to these folks, you're selling at a couple of things. You're selling on them to learn how to fish more effectively, to catch more fish. You're giving them advice. So these are the guys that benefit from like guides and guide services, advice on how to fish and where to fish and optimally when to fish for what types of species and the like. These folks will go fishing with a family friend or somebody else socially, at the drop of a hat almost. And they really do appreciate insight from the local fishing experts. So that makes sense. If you look at the types of fish that they go for, again, it's primarily freshwater, interestingly enough. 7 out of 10 said that they're fishing for bass. Another 50% said they're fishing for catfish. And I think the highest of all of these groups, at about 53%, said they're fishing for perch or panfish. panfish being the crappie, the sunfish, bluegills, etc. So they're fishing for those. And in the saltwater, I think we have a difference here in the saltwater in terms of what makes it to plate. So less folks for bluefish. If any of you are familiar with bluefish, they're very gamey and oily fish, but high percentages of cod, flounder, snapper, and sea bass, as well as redfish. So again, there's a large variety of the types of fish in the salt water across the country. So you're not going to get clear dominance there in any one of them. So what I'm showing here is my display then is a cookbook, because that's why they're going fishing. A freshwater setup, because predominantly freshwater, and a bait setup. And of course I don't have live bait here right now, so you won't see any worms wiggling around, but we can use the power baits for that. 60% of these folks went in the last year, and 75% went within from the past year up to about 3 years. So a large amount of these folks are active, but they're not active that many days. If it's spread throughout the categories, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 21, and so on, they're all pretty much equal at about 15%. So it's kind of scattered in that regard, nothing that you can really grow from there. And if you look at how to sell to these folks, well, clearly these folks are buying, but they're not spending that much. About 50% will spend under $250 a year, but there is a good portion of them that will spend between $250 and $1,000, kind of surprisingly. So they are starting to reach into the upper end. The folks do not necessarily buy reels, interestingly enough. So if you are considering yourself a consumptive angler and you're watching my channel for reel repair, that's probably why. I think the setup in freshwater for somebody catching fish in their local honey hole, well, I think they've probably got the setup that they need. They're not necessarily looking to upgrade the equipment. They are looking to upgrade technique, and they're also interested in what works best in lures and baits and the like. So that's kind of the audience for that. And if they're using a guide service, a lot of times the guides will be providing the tackle. The most purchased items, interestingly enough, are not based on this profile, is lures and bait at almost 95%. I think that's the highest level I've seen in any of these particular personas, is that they're almost all of them are buying lures and bait. Makes sense, especially if they're fishing live bait, which is the high preponderance of what they're doing, and fishing line. So at least they have the knowledge to change out the fishing line. You don't want dinner getting away on you because of an old line that you had. And then again, the last one that makes a significant statistical difference, I think, is that they're buying predominantly through a local bait and tackle shop, especially if you're buying live bait. I think that would make a lot of sense. Followed by the outdoor specialty store, which would be a Bass Pro and Cabela's, and then the mass merchants, including Walmart, Sam's, and the general sporting goods guys, Dick's and Academy and the like. So the profile itself says that the folks are interested in learning new techniques. They are interested in learning where the fish are, when the fish are, how to fish for them. They do participate in websites. Most of those are online magazines that will give them some increased education, like Field and Stream or Bass Angler. They do spend some time on the websites from the manufacturers and retailers, and they spend a lot of time on their sites with the state fish and wildlife sites. And in that case, I think it's more about the regulations, where it's open, when it's open, and so on for the seasons. They don't spend a lot of time on television. They don't spend a lot of time in social media. They do spend time in blogs and online magazines, just trying to get some additional information on the best techniques to use when doing that. So, are you a consumptive angler? Are you primarily in it for the relaxation, participation in the outdoors, but also the reward of bringing home dinner? Well, then this profile will fit you. If you're not in that category, well, stay tuned. There's still a few more to go. Keep watching my channel, and the best way to keep watching my channel is to subscribe. If you subscribe, you won't miss anything. If you hit the notification buttons, you'll see what I'm posting and when. and I do try to post on a regular basis, so I appreciate you staying with it and watching as these episodes come together. We got a couple more here. If you don't see yourself as a traditional, an occasional, a friendly fisher, or a consumptive angler, well, stay tuned. There's still a couple more to go. So I appreciate you watching. If you like the series, please indicate that in this. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to try and get back to you on that. And as most of you know, I do repair reels by mail. So if I have a reel that needs to be repaired, get ready for the upcoming season, well then please contact me by email on the business card that follows, and I'll try and get you that repair information. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.